Good afternoon. And today we have tea time with me, Caetsu. On the schedule we have a review of some gameplay from Caetsu. I'm actually not sure how to say the name. So if you're in the chat, would love to know which one it is. I never remember to ask previously. Hey Ymir, hey Licky, hey Levin, hey Matthew, hey Neil, and hey Alif, and Gazel is here. Wait, how do you say your name? Is it Gazel, or Gazel, or Gazelle, or Gazel? I'm not sure. But we will look at that, and then if you have anything like Final Fantasy XIV you would like to talk about, like something you're interested in discussing, it could be almost anything, then we can talk about it. Like, is there some game mechanic or something that you would like explained in more detail? It could even be something that I have talked about in a video previously, and what's going to happen then is I'm probably going to go and explain what it is and then say, oh, I also have this video about it, so you can have that to look into later, if you like. But anything, the worst that can happen is I go, I don't know. Like, if for example you ask me about PvP stuff, then the best I have for you is typically, well, I know how it works, and I could guess how you would use it, but I don't play enough PvP to actually give a lot of guidance on it. Ymir says, is a GCD 245 on Gunbreaker good? That's fine. You want to use fast Gunbreaker rotations in that case. So you need to aim for a late weave to no mercy. And yeah, if you follow like optimized openers, you want to use whichever one is optimized for 9 GCDs in your opener and your bursts. But yeah, as Santo says, it's mostly preference. As I will go over in the Gunbreaker guide coming out a bit later today, what is best is dictated basically on how many good crit pieces in the current raid tier also happens to have skill speed on them. That is mostly what's going to dictate what is best. But the reason for that is that the power difference between 2.5, 2.45, 2.4 even, is so small that it might come down to the specific small details in a boss fight, or the way you play the job, or the way that Gunbreaker fares in that particular fight, or based on how many crits you get. Like, it can be something extremely specific. So if you like 2.5, I like 2.5, then do that. If you like 2.45, then do that. If you like 2.4, do that. The awkward thing is that it can be very expensive. It can be very expensive in terms of like stats that you'd rather have elsewhere to force a specific like GCD, because like if the gear you have gives you 2.5 but you want 2.4, then you're going to need like 15, 16, 17 skill speed materia, which is most of your materia, to make that magic happen. So that can be a little awkward. Also, hey Mali, how are you doing? And Gazel says, I didn't give much thought to my name. That's fair. And yeah, Santo is the local Gunbreaker Savage Raider main. So if there's something Gunbreaker specific, like super minute details, they might very well know better than me. But I have a pretty good understanding of how the job works, like in a pretty wide array of situations. So basically, 245 is good. If you had like 248 or 249, you would be using the slow rotation, but you would have a little bit of skill speed. It doesn't change much. The thing is, this slightly faster GCD would give you a little bit more wiggle room if you fall behind on your rotation for some reason. Like, you miss a GCD, you might be able to catch up again. Or something delays you. So there's nothing bad in having that. In fact, for most jobs, when they say, oh, you need specifically this GCD for things to work, it's like if you're playing perfectly. In most cases, whatever you happen to have will work. It's just that it'll be a little harder. You might have to freestyle a bit. You might need to actually like dictate a rotation for yourself once the opener ends, because things in the 2-minute burst might not line up correctly, for example. This could be the case for Machinist or Samurai, for example. If you have a weird amount of skill speed, then their 2-minute bursts will get really awkward. Always crit keen edge. That is the classic. Crit the weakest attack in your arsenal, and then meanwhile your best attack never even gets a direct hit, right? Matthew says, the gear this patch was not good for people wanting fast GCDs. It is actually the perfect storm of everyone getting screwed over, Matthew. The best in slot list for tanks that want a 2.50 GCD uses 2 Tombstone rings, I believe. Because the Savage Drop ring has skill speed on it, if I remember correctly. Meanwhile, you can go full slow mode on everything else. So both the fast build and the slow build gets kinda messed with in this case. So it's pick your poison. What would you rather have? You could also just go whatever you like. Like he says, Summoner is perfect. Well, Summoner is also extremely adaptable. It has like a pretty, like, yeah, 248 is perfectly fine, but like Summoner isn't hurt very much by going down to like 245. Like they could have a few spell speed pieces and it would be perfectly fine. They should make spells scale off skill speed on Paladins, make it more flexible on skill speed. You know, before that, they should have made it so that Dark Knight spells scale with skill speed instead of making Blood Weapon 5 stacks. The only reason it was a problem was because they had spells in their arsenal. That's the only reason it was a problem in the first place. Kind of annoying, so to me I can't really play Paladin this tier. You can, it will just be awkward. It will be a little awkward compared to perfect 250, but that's the case with all jobs that like 250. If you have skill speed, it will feel a little awkward. Like, this is why I spent a lot of spent some time in my in some of my recent videos going over the fact that if you play Warrior, for example, on 2.5, then if your first use of Upheaval is an early weave, and just for anyone not sure what that means, this is an early weave. And this is a late weave. Then your Upheaval will come up as an early weave every time until you don't use it on cooldown. Like, it will still be an early weave every 30 seconds if your GCD is 2.5. If it's 2.4, the exact timing it comes up will vary because you have an odd number of GCDs in a 1-minute loop instead of an even number. But not only that, Upheaval will alternate between being an early weave and a late weave every 30 seconds. This means that every minute it will be an early weave, and then every half minute it will be a late weave. Sometimes this can be a problem. This isn't a problem for Warrior because they don't really have that much happening on the half minutes, so it's like, whatever, right? You just click that. But if, for example, you're a Gunbreaker and you have a GCD of 2.4, then it is extremely important you keep track of whether that blasting zone was an early or a late weave. Because, and I actually also mentioned this in the Gunbreaker guide coming out a little bit later today, if you, and I'm just going to like do, I'll do a Gnashing Fang combo that includes it, right? Just at the very start of it, to showcase, I'll do an early weave blasting zone specifically So we will go Gnashing Fang, Blasting Zone, Continuation, and then we just go there, and then I'll just do GCDs, and then you'll see what I mean. Well, actually, well, you will see what I mean with the 2-5. I don't have 2-4. I will not use No Mercy. I will just do Gnashing Fang and Blasting Zone stuff. So we do Gnashing Fang, Blasting Zone, Jugular Rip, and then we do the rest of the Continuation combo. And then I'll just do 1, 2, 3 combos to show you what happens when the next Gnashing Fang combo comes up, right? And Leggy is right, Warrior doesn't really care about speed. The only thing speed does for Warrior these days is it makes it easier to fit an fit the 4th GCD in Bloodwetting, but you don't need it. So we do Gnashing Fang, Blasting Zone, Jugular Rip. Perfectly, again, precisely in the early weave. And this will keep being the case until you miss it. If your GCD instead was 2-4, I don't have gear to get 2-4 at this very moment, so that would be a little awkward. Then it would flip. So like if you're in your opener, you early weave Blasting Zone, then you need to late weave it in the half minutes. And then you have to early weave it. You have to late weave it in the half minutes, and then you have to early weave it again in the full minutes. That has an effect on how you do your opener, right? Especially if Blasting Zone lands during your Gnashing Fang combo, and it typically does in the half minutes. Lemon says, this is why I like my low skill speed for most jobs. That's fair. Also, Geisel says, when you see your auto crit, but your auto attack crit, but Adler doesn't. Well, at least as a scholar, your auto attack crit isn't completely meaningless. That would be like 200 damage, right? And Neil is here. Right. So, I think this is a pretty good time to take a look at that and those clips then. So, specifically what Gazel has sent me here is first time uploading videos on YouTube. I couldn't figure out how to insert chapters. Well, I checked your video. It has chapters, so you figured it out, and I really appreciate it. 2 boss fights each video, cut out the trash phases, mainly because I am pretty sure I was overhealing during them. The trash phases, like trash parts of alliance raids, tend to be like just a big mess. Like for example, the ice mobs in Eurovision, the Euroscene. It is very normal for like several players to just die because no one interrupted the big guys. Yes, did you know you can interrupt the big guys in that ice arena? Most people don't know that because they are too busy cleaving. And you're supposed to interrupt them. Now, it says, if I have to pick a particular fight, I would say the Allfig and Nemea, second half of part 1, or Haloni, first half of part 2, since I feel like I messed up a lot of the OGCDs there. The Chain and Seraph macros near the center are just Mycon, so that I can keep track of the cooldowns without accidentally clicking on them. So, if anyone does not know what that means, when you make a macro, for the macro to, for example, show Shukuchi here, right? You need to say M icon, which means macro icon, and that apparently is equivalent to like straight up the actual button, except you need to separately give it the ability to do the action. So if I, for example, just made a macro here and said like so, then I have it there. You can see it even has 2 charges and everything. Then I use Shukuchi here. You can see the cooldown on this one as well. But it doesn't actually do anything. Like if I switch them, it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. So if you like to have like some like action buttons here near your character, like if you play with really small hotbars and you just need to keep track of like 5 cooldowns or something, you can use macros like this to like have 5 buttons that you can click on them and nothing happens. So it's perfectly safe. And you can still track your cooldowns. It's very, very smart. Some people like that. I used to have something similar to that when I played World of Warcraft. That's typically done with a thing called weak auras, which is like mini custom add-ons. Alif says, what is the difference between individual and shared tab in the macro menu? This is Small Dragon Caetsu Chaiji's macros. This is both Small Dragon and Small Kai's macro menu. If I logged into Small Kai right now, I'm not going to, but if I did, all these macros should be there as well. There's no particular reason why I have placed them like this. I used to only have one character, so it didn't really matter to me, right? This, like, it's like this is like when you install a program on your computer and it's like, do you want to install it for this user or all users? This is all users. This is this user. That is pretty much it. Hey Cassia, how are you doing? Emia says I still don't get macros. I have a guide on macros, but the general idea is that with macros, you should only use them if you actually need them for something. If you're using a macro just for the sake of using a macro, it tends to be significantly worse than doing it without a macro. Doing good? That's good to hear. I'm also doing well. Let's see. So a good example of that is if you're a white mage. Then you might think that having a mouse over macro for Cure 2 would be super neat, because then you can just mouse over someone and cure them, which means you can keep your target on the boss. But the thing is, I can click much more easily with the actual Cure 2 button compared to the macro, because with the actual button I do this. I click once, and I can click like over half a second in advance, and it generally works. If I'm using a macro, then I click once, then I can still click just once, but you need to do, like if I click it here where I normally would, it doesn't count because the macro works a little weird. The way macros work is that it reads one line per frame, which generally means that if you have a higher frame rate, it's even less consistent. Meanwhile, normal spells and weapon skills work on the spell queue system, which means that you can press the button. Basically, the animation lock of a button is like the time frame you can use the button in, and it will count. Which means that you can, and that also counts for OGCDs. It's way easier to do that if you don't want to mash all the time. T macros for ground target abilities is also good. They are less crucial nowadays since they added this setting that allows you to double click the button to place. Makes it a lot easier to do. The thing with T macros as well was that they typically allowed you to teleport as close to where your mouse was pointing as possible, which also made them more consistent. But you can choose a setting so that it just limits the targeting range to be in range. So you don't really need those anymore. But they are sometimes helpful. Like, for example, I don't have it on right now, but the reason why I have a Shikuchi macro here is because the only way to teleport precisely to the location of another player is to use the T macro. I stand right on top of Nil here. Which is a really, like, I don't know when specifically you would need this, but it would be much more difficult to do this without a macro. So that like gives you an actual like a mechanical advantage that you wouldn't have without the macro, and that is when macros become really good. Potato Jack says I specifically love using macros for my Astrologian and White Mage, looking at my cards and the bubble stuff. Yeah, we also talked about that, using macros like next to your party frames. That is good if you prefer to do it like that. We're trading sweets. Thank you. Gazelle says, I found double tapping is harder than timing the macro spam when it goes after broil, so I kept it. That's fair. That's fair. It is, as I said, it is mostly a preference thing. It is more a problem with spells because you need to press those a lot more often, and weapon skills. That makes the mashing a lot more problematic. Also, hi Irika, how are you doing? Santo says, I ran into problems sometimes with my TBN macro not going off as Dark Knight, and the other tank taking too much damage or dying when they're kitchen sinking something. Yeah, and for those that don't know what kitchen sinking is, that is when a tank buster or a boss mechanic of some sort requires you to use everything but the kitchen sink to survive it. Every single cooldown. And yeah, if you lag, then a lot of macros mess up as well. But the thing is, if you're playing on 60 FPS, right? If you're playing on 60 FPS, then a macro that looks like this will spend, when you click the button, when you click the macro itself, it will use the first frame to read, oh, right, the icon is this. Then it'll use the second frame to go, oh, right, no errors, of course. And then the third frame, it will attempt to use Tetragrammaton. Fourth frame, attempt to use Tetragrammaton. 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 15. Which means that 13 frames of the next second, essentially. So around a fourth of the next second, the macro will attempt to use Tetragrammaton. Now, if you play on 60 FPS, that is around a fourth of a second, right? Closer to a fifth of a second. And if you mash too fast, as Licky says, if you mash too fast, you will actually never reach the point where it plays. And Gazel says, so if so, shouldn't you put Micon at the very bottom? You probably should, now that you mention it. It is typically just put in the top, because for the most part, I didn't actually copy that apparently. You could do this. Overall, it shouldn't matter, because you have to remember, if you're mashing the button, it should come out quickly. So it should make very little difference. But yeah, if you could mash so fast, that it would go every single frame, then it would never get to the point where it uses the action if you mash it fast enough, if you have them in the top. That is true. I'd recommend tab complete the spell name if you ever switch language or your macro breaks. That's true, but I'm pretty sure this game doesn't exist in Danish. I would be surprised if one day a Danish translation of Final Fantasy XIV came out. Could you imagine? It would also be really weird, because then you switch to Dragoon and then some of the attacks have no name changes at all. But, right. So, the point is, what ultimately matters here is that if you play on 60 FPS, then only like a fifth of the time, or like a fifth of a second, will the macro be trying to use Tetragrammaton. A fifth of a second, which means you have to mash fast enough that you're at least clicking the button 5 times per second. At least. That is perfectly doable. It is. But it might be difficult for some players, especially like if you're a clicker, for example, then it might be difficult, although then you wouldn't use a mouse over macro, right? And this only becomes worse if you play on higher frames. Like if you play on, say, I don't know, like 120 FPS, then it's closer to a tenth of a second, which means you have to press the button 10 times per second, while also moving your character around and possibly clicking other buttons, right? And managing your mouse. You have to like be mega smashing that Tetragrammaton button while finding your target and everything, which makes it a little bit inconsistent. Imagine if you play on 240 FPS, which some players might, then it's even worse. So like if you're a macro master and you just love playing with macros, if you get that if you play it on 30 FPS, for example, then macros start to actually be superior at spell queuing to the actual in-game spell queue. Yumi says I play on 36 FPS. Well, there you go. But yeah, that is a good tip. Like, I didn't actually ever consider that you could use the tab autocomplete for action names. Right, should we take a look at the clip that Gazel sent us? Sent us, technically. Since it is in the Discord. So, the question was... the second half of the first part, or the first half of the second part. Let's start with the first part then. Licky says if tab complete, you don't need the quotation marks for skills. That is also true. You technically, whoops. You don't need the quotation marks for actions that are single words, actually. You only need them for actions that have more than one word. But it is generally like good programming practice to do it anyway, just, you know, for consistency. It also looks nicer. That also means that if you're using tab autocomplete, then you should probably do that for all of your macros. Again, looks nicer. Right, so I'm going to turn off the sound on... Oh, there's Arya. I'll turn off the sound on the game. I think the clips are with no sound, so that might get a little too ominous, don't you think? Basil says, fun fact, if you're playing in Japanese, you never need quotations. Isn't that because all of the actions have no space between them in their names in Japanese? Right, so here we are. This is part 2, this is part 1. So you can see here we have a timestamp. Alif says, say hi to Arya in game. So, yeah, exactly, guys. The reason why you need quotation marks for macros if there are multiple words is specifically because programming... Oh, that is an interestingly looking... Oh, we'll manage. I have checked the video quality. You have to... We'll figure out and see. We already have the challenge of discovering what the actions are named in English, in Japanese. So I'll see what we can see. Gazel did say they haven't uploaded to YouTube before, so it's totally understandable. We will get where we can, and I will see what advice I can give. But yeah, the reason why macros require quotation marks if they are multi-worded is because in programming, and macros are programming in a way, they tend to like separate the actual like inputs by space. So if an input has spaces in it, then you know, that doesn't really work, right? Normally you would have like the actual object be named with like a dash or an underscore or something, or nothing. Like it would just be like a camel case or Pascal case or something like that, to completely avoid having a problem with spaces. But we don't have that luxury when we're playing a game where actions have to have names that make sense, and we're not very interested in programming in that aspect. Right, so we want to see if I remember correctly, Gazel was concerned that they were letting their co-healer do too much of the heavy lifting in alliance raids. And the particular thing was regards to OGCDs, and then we got mentioned that we have right here, as you can see, is my mouse visible? It is a little small, but it is, you can see it. These are macros, you can't actually click them. Chain Stratagem and Seraph being 2-minute cooldowns, pretty good to keep track of those. I'm guessing you can't click them, but I don't see... Oh, there's Seraph and there's Chain Stratagem. I was just about to say that it would be very interesting if you didn't have them. You can't see my mouse. It is a little small. That was not what I wanted. Does this help? Nope, it doesn't, because apparently my stream doesn't care how big I said the mouse should be. Let me see if I can do something else. I don't know. I might have to look into that later. Matthew says, is making the co-healer do too much a thing in alliance raids? Have you ever gone into a raid, or an alliance raid, or a trial, and felt like your co-healer wasn't doing a thing? Like, it felt like they were just, like, there, and you were doing all of the work? Kasadi, I'm using OBS. That is what it feels like when the other healer is sitting there thinking, am I making the other healer do all the work? If the answer is yes, then your co-healer is sitting there like, why am I doing all this healing? Where's my co-healer doing nothing? That is, the thing is that as the healer not doing very much, you don't really see it. As the healer doing all the work, you're sitting there like, why is my co-healer AFK? Or why are they just attacking? Like, I talked about recently that for my Scholar guide, I got some raid footage with a co-healer that, like, they weren't, like, being forced to do too much work. They were insisting on doing too much work, because every time anything happened, anything at all, they would spam out heals. So I just was like, okay, then I'll just use all of my ether flows on damage. Right, if you're using window capture, there should be a box in source properties to capture your cursor. Yeah, I have it on capture the cursor. But it only lets me choose whether it's shown or not. It doesn't let me adjust it in any way. Like, it is here. If you like take a little loop like a detective and like look really closely, the mouse is here on screen. It just didn't let me show the cursor bigger. Like, I actually adjusted the cursor size on my screen and then moved it back in, and it was the same on OBS. Jacob says, when I play Shield, I almost only use off-global healing with focus on mitigation, which should balance out how much the other has to do. As Pure, I expect to do most of the heavy lifting. In Savage raids, it depends on what is required. the barrier healer might need to put up barriers more than you would like, for example. In casual content, the White Mage and the Astrologian does not need to use Medicat 2 or Aspect at Helios every time the raid takes a lot of damage. You don't need to do that. In fact, the barrier healer has more easy access to like slow healing over time for everyone with Kira Holy or Sacred Soil. So it depends on the situation. If everyone drops to 1 HP and you need to top everyone up, then both healers have to step into action. They both have to do something. The pure healer is more capable of bringing everyone up on their own, but the barrier healer has burst healing. Like Sage can use Zoe and Noima and heal everyone for like 40% of their health with a single GCD. And that is pretty good. And if you combine it with, say, White Mage already having Temperance up, that is slightly more than that. And if the Sage itself uses Physis first, that is slightly more than that. So on and so forth. So it's complicated, but the point is that if you're playing casual content, then if both healers are pulling their weight, then unless your raid is making a huge amount of mistakes, neither healer will have to use a GCD on Cure or Medica. You will usually, like a White Mage, will be able to get away with just the Lilies. Outside of like special exceptions. That is pretty much what I'm getting at. But it depends on the group. Now, the clip we're going to look at is specifically about, is Gazel using all, like, are they just slacking while the other healer's working hard? Hard to say. The way that I think we will look at that is that we're going to go through the clip and see whenever like big damage happens, what does Gazel do? What does the co-healer do? And I will try my best to identify the actions, because this is in Japanese translation as far as I can see. So we will have to work with what we've got. Right. Wait. Oh. And there's no sound on this clip, so I muted it just in case, but there was no sound anywhere when I checked. So we have a pre-placed, we have a pre-made Adlo. Is that resighted? Yes, that was a resighted Adlocurium on the tank with deployment tactics. That is very good. Like, that is a very good start. Like, on a boss, in almost all boss fights in the game at this point, one of the first things a boss is going to do is do damage to everyone. And this fight in particular, this fire card is very mean. There's just one problem. Some of the shields managed to run out before the damage applied, but that is difficult to determine. Like, that is not a mistake. It could have been an ice card. I would say this strategy of using recitation Adlocurium deployment tactics leading up to a boss fight is a good default. If you know a fight well enough to go, well, there isn't going to be an AoE attack in the first 30 seconds, then you can skip this and save the recitation for something else. But if you don't know, or you're not sure, then placing it is good. Like, if you had placed Adlocurium up like 3 or 4 seconds later, then the shields would have been active for everyone in your party for the full duration of whether it was a fire card or an ice card. Doesn't matter. If it was an ice card, then everyone could have dodged it by moving, but sometimes people don't because it's an alliance raid, and those that don't move, they take a huge amount of damage, and then you will save that. And when the fire card happens, you don't want to be casting anything. Let me just rewind that. So when this debuff, and I know it might be really difficult to see this, it says 2 here. When that hits 0, you want to press escape, untarget the boss, and just do this. Just don't touch anything Because if you do, then that happens. It hurts so much. Like, it hurts so much. You really don't want to be doing anything while the fire debuff is there. Well, actually, I completely mis-explained that one. It's when this one reaches 0. Sorry. When this one reaches 0, you get this debuff. If you're doing anything while this debuff is here, just hanging out, then this happens. Every action you do, and that includes casting anything, moving, auto-attacking, does damage to you. Exactly, Jacob. Pyrite is the generic name for fire or don't do action. Pyretic, exactly, is one of those debuffs I would rather respect than sorry. Exactly. That is why I'm saying respect stillness. Oh man, I remember like a year ago or something, I saw Preacher watch like the first content he ever watched of like Final Fantasy XIV rating was T, the Epic of Alexander, and he heard them like go stillness, and he couldn't get over it. It was so funny. But yeah, respect stillness. Yeah, exactly. If you want to be safe with these kinds of mechanics, stop now. Just press escape. Like when it says 1, like right here. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter if someone else needs that healing to live. You press escape and just remove your hands. Now, you might have to press escape more than once if you're casting something. You want to cancel your cast and stop attacking completely. So you just on-target the boss, so it's not even an option. Just complete stop, you don't want to move, and then you just don't do anything. Now you continue. There's also acceleration problems. Exactly, that is the mechanic with the dice over your head. That is also, as Matthew says, respect stillness. On-target the boss, remove your hands from the keyboard and the mouse, drop, like, maybe you shouldn't do this move if you're playing on a controller, because then you're gonna drop your controller on your feet. And then it might mess with the analog sticks and stuff like that. But like, just complete stop, because if you're doing anything when the dice hit 0, you typically get either killed outright, get knocked into the end, take a huge amount of damage, or both. So just stop everything. Garsel says, I think I could do that, but a few seconds slower since another scholar was doing the first chain. That is also true. That one, I will say, when you're in an alliance raid, there's a very high chance that if there are multiple of the same job, and usually there are, you will overlap debuffs on the boss, like chain stratagem. When it works, it's great. When you manage to like split them up. But this is where, like, I would say, in an alliance raid, there's a lot of weirdness going on. There's not very much communication, so I would say it's more impressive if you get it right, rather than a mistake if you get it wrong, right? That's why I didn't really check that, because it doesn't really... It wouldn't happen in, like, a high difficulty encounter like a Savage raid, because you wouldn't have 2 scholars there. So I wouldn't really count that as a mistake, but you're right, you could change that. Jacob says, anyway, anything I do pre-fight is based on experience. For example, I have to time my earthly star differently depending on the fight. That is true, but if you're not sure, then placing the earthly star at all on your first try isn't a bad idea. Just drop it so that it's there. Right, so we continue. I could have sworn there was a raid wipe near the start of this fight, but apparently there's not very much happening here. I believe this is cards again, isn't it? It's cards again, and then Ulthik speeds it up. So you don't have to worry about that, because it speeds up the timer. Actually, there's one thing I was curious about. Speed cards. I was curious about is... So you took a huge chunk of damage here. Who dealt with that? you had dissipation up for damage, of course. Or partly for damage. So the question is, what did you use? You couldn't use this because you couldn't use your Ether Pact because your pet isn't here. You were casting Broil, you got some healing. What is that? Let me just see here. White Mage, Final Fantasy 14, find the official website. Get the Japanese translation. Can I find out what that spell is? That is a Flatus Solus. That's fine. That doesn't cost the other healer anything. They don't care. That they might actually be appreciative that you gave them a reason to use it. That doesn't matter. Yeah, that was basically what was done about this mechanic. Then you got an Aurora, I think. Isn't that's Aurora from the Gunbreaker, right? Exactly, Potato Jack. And yeah, the group as a whole dealt with this mechanic without really losing anything. So that was not a mistake on your part. The other healer had it covered, and they were fine to do that. Now, here the timer goes a little faster, so like I would say stop here. But the idea is still that you want to stop. Fortunately, the timer is only 2 seconds, so you only took half of your health again. But you can actually instantly die from this sometimes. Now, you get Heart of Corundum from the Gunbreaker. I think you also got that last time. Yeah, see, you got the Heart of Corundum here. Interesting. The Gunbreaker is on point with the support heals, by the way. That is, like, very nice. That might be part of the reason why you're sitting there, like, wondering if you weren't doing enough. Because everyone else was, had so much stuff. The thing is, Geisel says, I felt sorry getting those buffs. So, the Gunbreaker isn't tanking right now. The Gunbreaker isn't tanking anything, as far as I can see. Your entire group, we can see that is on Ulthic, so your tank isn't tanking Nemea. So your co-tank, well, your tank was not you getting Heart of Corundum came at the cost of whoever was tanking Ulthic not getting them. But it doesn't seem like the other tanks are missing them, and because the Alliance C tank is also Gunbreaker. If that is this person, I'm not sure if it is, then you wouldn't want to use Heart of Corundum on that tank anyway, because they don't stack, so it might be wasted. So it is a little complicated. But like there's a lot of things to consider. Also, just want to say, impressively, well, actually. Right, because the Gunbreaker isn't tagging anything, they always have the Brutal Shell to copy to you as well. So now something else is happening. I can't always remember these mechanics. That is a long time before the raid wight comes, actually. So what happens here? You are using Sacred Soil. Good choice. That is my favorite. Wait a minute. Didn't you use Sacred Soil? Am I missing something? You used something here. Energy Drain, right? That was Energy Drain. And then Energy Drain. Ah, now I know. It's because you used Sacred Soil and Ether Flow. That's why. Because it's like, you used Sacred Soil, but you have 3 Ether Flows. Yeah, that is a good choice. It seems like if we just wait, that was a little too far. It seems like there was a bunch of stuff coming out here. We can also see the summoner here using Rekindle on themselves. So So what comes out elsewhere? Is that the, I'm guessing that's a Afflatus Rapture? Yeah, it seems like that name matches. And the sprint one. Use that? Oh yeah, there it is. That is also very, like... See, if I was playing in this situation, as Scholar, I'm not used to playing Scholar enough to go, oh, we have a spread mechanic. I'll give everyone a sprint. I would just forget to do that. That is a good idea. Another good thing is that you weren't standing on the lines. The dancer over here made a mistake and took an obscene amount of damage because they took the magic attack while standing on the lines. So that is like another case of, so how do the healers deal with it? What is used? It is a little difficult to determine these names. I wish there were icons to go with them. That would make it a lot easier. That is 2 hits of healing, so where's that coming from? Fey Blessing. Oh, is that Fey Blessing? Why do you get 2 of them? Why are there 2 of them? Stealthy Spices. This is why I wish there was like a sort of GCD track or something so we can see what buttons we pressed. I agree. That would make it a lot easier to like review. Oh, one of them is on the Summoner. Right, okay. Right, that is true. I was like thinking, is it both on you? But that makes a lot more sense. That also explains why one of them is significantly smaller, aside from the fact that it is a crit. Right. As I have suggested in my Scholar Guide, if you can, use your pet actions first, because they don't cost you anything. They don't cost you anything compared to using your Etherflow actions. Obviously, using Fey Blessing costs you the cooldown of Fey Blessing. Using Excogitation costs you the cooldown of Excogitation, but on top of costing you Excogitation's cooldown, it also costs you energy drain. So if you can get by with just your pet cooldowns and your non-Etherflow spending cooldowns, that means you get more energy drains, which means more damage. And it's a small amount of damage, but it is better than no damage, right? Like, so far, I don't see any issues. You've been using cooldowns in response to most attacks. Like, the main things you haven't done much about has been you focused more on dealing with raid-wide actions and then left the specific mistakes in the raid you've left to the other healer, which is not bad because White Mage tends to have like more readily available options to deal with avoidable damage. Like, the White Mage is probably sitting there like, I wonder who I should use my lilies on next. So they want to do that. They want to use their lilies, so it's not really a problem. Meanwhile, you would rather keep all of your healing to attack with. Hey, Phoenix. Good to see you. And then we have this, which is entirely avoidable, but that still leaves the opportunity for a lot of people to get hit. Seems like no one... Oh, there's a bard over there, but that's not your problem. That is a different raid team. Right, so... Gasol says, not quite used to single target in these situations. In that case, my advice is... Let me just remember, 717. If we just rewind for a moment to... here. What I would have done, if I was in a... I would have reacted in one of 2 ways right here. Either I would have used Lost Raid on myself, or I would use Executation on myself, depending on the danger I found myself in. In this case, I would feel very safe because I know the boss isn't doing anything for the next while. because of that, I would use Ether Pact on myself now. Now the thing is, I would do that, which means that your pet would stop, queue up, and cast Ether Pact on you. Then you get that healing. That is not reason to cancel Ether Pact. You can still cast Ether Pact here. I'm pretty sure the healing you get here is from your pet. I think, no, that's from Aurora. Yeah, that is when I would recommend Ether Pact. When you see single target damage on players, and the notable thing here is that it tends to need to be, like, it needs to be damage where you're looking at it and going, oh, well, if I don't, like, nuke them with heals right now, they're not going to die. There's going to be plenty of time for Ether Pact to play out before I have to do anything. It is comparable to a Sage just going, oh, you took 80% of your health in damage? Well, there's not going to be any mechanics for the next minute, or for the next 30 seconds. I'm just going to put my Cardia on you. Licky says Embrace is usually enough. The thing is, if you dropped to this much health, then you're going to die from a possible mechanic, and it will take your pet like 15 seconds healing you and only you to fix that. So at this health, I would say use Ether Pact, especially because your fairy gauge is full. If you use Energy Drain right now, you're losing Ether Pact healing. Like, it's basically free real estate right now. It is completely free real estate. But I will agree that if, like, the reason why I'm, like, making sure to look at this is because I'm saying, you take this damage, then you weave Ether Pact. Then you receive healing from elsewhere. Then you reconsider, should I cancel Ether Pact? You don't have to, you've already queued it up, you've already gone through the motions of using it. You don't have to use it anymore because you're no longer in any danger at all. Your pet is perfectly capable of healing you up with Embrace at this point, regardless of what's coming up next. But you already did it, and you have so much you have so much fairy gauge that you might as well use it. It's my opinion, and that's also a key thing here with this advice, is that it's advice from my perspective. It is what I would do. That is what I would add. As you can see, remember, we're looking at the perspective of a healer doing a boss fight that they didn't wipe in, which means that it doesn't actually matter whether Gazel used their healing better, because they used it enough that they didn't wipe. So the question is, could we have done something different? What if the White Mage didn't heal Gazel? What if the Gunbreaker didn't heal Gazel? What could Gazel have done different? And if the problem is, I'm not sure what to do about heavy single target healing without, like, using Advocurium, then I would say Ether Pact. Just boom, Ether Pact. It's a combination of things that makes it really nice, because Ether Pact both heals for almost twice the healing that Embrace does, so it, like, gets the stuff done twice as fast, but it also means you know who your pet is healing, which means that it's not going to get distracted by someone else taking damage. Although typically it heals whoever needs it the most, so if Ether Pact is already on whoever needs it the most, then it doesn't change anything, right? Hope that makes sense. Yeah, overall it is a matter of what could you do better? What could you add in a fight like this? There we have Seraph. Wait, why? What did you use Seraph for a specific reason? The Seraph comes out here. Is it in response to the tank, to the double tank buster? Licky says, does Embrace target the lowest number health or lowest health percentage? That is actually a good question. I can't remember. I believe it is whoever has the lowest health percentage. I'm pretty sure they changed it to that. because that makes your fairy more likely to choose the tank. Because when the tank has less percentage health, which they usually do when they take damage, they will like prioritize over some DPS taking a hit, unless the DPS takes a lot of damage. I think it used to be the literal lowest HP. I'm pretty sure they changed it to percent, but I'm not actually sure. Does anyone know for certain on this? Then I would like input. Coco says, it appears that I fell asleep when the stream started. What did I miss? We're reviewing Gazel's healing fight here. Gazel says, yes, I used Seraph in response to the double tank buster. Right. That is not a bad idea. The reason why it surprised me is because Seraph doesn't do that much for single target healing. It is well, it doesn't do much in terms of burst healing on a single target. What Seraph adds to your pet is it makes it so that in addition to the embrace healing, it just also applies a shield for the same amount, which is good. And good for a tank buster. Nothing wrong with that. Consolation, like the raid button you can use on it, heals for a little bit more and also applies a shield to everyone. Now, a really strange thing is that shield is the same shield as the Seraphic Veil heals apply, so they don't actually stack for some reason. Which means that what Seraph adds in response to the tank buster is like 180 potency worth of shield. That is not bad. Like, if you're not going to use it for anything else, that isn't a bad thing. Like, it is better than, as you say, letting it just sit there. But what I'm trying to say is that Seraph is a lot more potent as a raid cooldown rather than a tank response. I don't know what, like, if you're looking at the situation right now, your tank, I'm also very good at forgetting Seraph. I tend to, when I'm like using Scholar, I tend to almost forget it entirely. If I'm recording something, I have to tell myself, okay, listen, you need to use Seraph on this recording at some point. You have to use it, because otherwise you'll have to go again. What you could have, and that is actually a really good suggestion, Gazel. What you could do different is you could have used Sacred Soil. That would probably help your tank more. It would also be so if we circle back to the thing about using your pet things first, using Sacred Soil would be more helpful for your tank, but it would cost you an energy drain. So the question is, do you need to do that? You could also use Protraction. That would increase the health of your tank by some amount. You could also have used Recitation Excogitation if you believed the tank would lose that much HP. But given that the tank has 100,000 health, it has Divine Benison, and some shield, some of it from your Seraphic Veil. They have also used both Nebula and Rampart. This tank buster is not going to do very much. It's probably not going to leave a dent on the tank. So Excogitation, with or without Recitation, would probably not be very helpful. So keeping that Recitation for potentially a wait, what's that called? Let me just see. Indomitability would probably be nicer for later, just in case you need it. You probably don't. But yeah, the reason why using Seraph for this gave a little bit of a stop to me was because I was thinking that is a little excessive for a tank buster. But if you weren't going to, like, if you don't, like, so we can see here that this fight is probably going to continue for, oh, it looks like the fight continues. It continues into the part 2. That is important to note for me. This fight isn't going to continue for much longer. So if your Summon Seraph isn't needed for the rest of this fight, then using it now is better than not using it, right? as like using a cooldown is better than not using it. But that is why it surprised me. The reason why I also had to rewind is because if you use if you use Summon Seraph for this mechanic, that made a lot more sense to me. But if you used it specifically in response to the Tank Buster, that was surprising. And the timing of your Summon Seraph was also what made me think it was probably not for this. Like you see here, the AoEs do... It's not much, but it is so little, it is enough damage that if your Seraph had been alive and ready for the full thing, then it would possibly have completely nullified the damage from that mechanic. Which, again, isn't a bad thing. An awkward thing with something like Summon Seraph is also that if your tank isn't tanking anything, then your pet's value drops immensely. Like, your fairy is healing Bell here right now. I don't know what... Oh, your tank is tanking Nemea now. Wait, did the other tank die? Oh, yes. The Gunbreaker tank tanking Nemea died through the knockback mechanic. So now your tank is actually tanking something. Great timing, just as I was about to make a point about your pet not being very helpful when no one is taking damage, your tank starts taking like regular damage. Isn't that incredible? So this is of course the stay moving. I can't remember if there's a common phrase for that, the opposite of pyretic. That was Gunbreaker's a paid actor. You planned this. That was I would probably, like, if it was me doing this, I would probably had let me just find the exact moment I'm looking for. I would probably, as a scholar, I would at this moment where it says 2, I would stop standing still and just run around and use either I would use Ruin 2 or I would use Swift Cast Broil so that I didn't have to risk standing still. You, on the other hand, start moving. You'd go, oh, well, I have so much time. There's 2 whole seconds. Cast a full extra Broil and then start slide casting in the last moment. Like, that was, like, that looked frame perfect right there. That is, like, full points for that. I wouldn't do that myself because, and who was it that said that earlier? Caetsu said pyretic is one of those debuffs I would rather respect than be sorry. This one is even worse. Like, if you got frozen, you would take damage over time, and then Althik would kill you. Like, he's not only would you be stunned, but he's pointing that cleave right at you. That greedy broil was at the risk of death. You managed it, so you didn't do anything wrong. Nothing. I'm just impressed that you would take that risk. Oh, there's the expedient on the spread marker again. Very nice. Jacob says jumping on the spot works well to avoid being frozen. It does. It does. The reason why I don't recommend that is because if the freeze resolves in the frame where you just landed, unless you have the frame perfect jump, like precisely on the frame that your toes touch the ground, you're technically standing still in that frame. While if you just run, like, you don't even have to run much, you just have to be actively moving, then there is not a single frame where you're not moving. So that is why, like, yes, jumping works if you time it so that you're in the air while the debuff resolves. But if you're just spamming jump and just hoping, which some players might if you just say just jumping on the spot, that will sometimes fail you. It is less problematic for for melee DPS, because they can just spam jump while auto-attacking and doing weapon skills, and all of those things counts as something for some frames. Umia says destroy your A and D key. I would recommend holding one key, or like constantly having at least one key pressed down at all times, so that you're never like changing direction. It's a really minor thing, but it's just if the game happens to catch you in the frame where you're not moving, then it sucks. And it's going to feel like the game cheated you. Licky says, I believe that debuff is client side, so ping doesn't even matter. That's good. Azel says, this footage was me, haven't been there for 2 or 3 weeks, so the timing is a bit rough. That is also fair, and this fight is also no longer particularly current, because we don't need those coins for anything for the next 3 months or so. But it's still interesting, I hope. But yeah, again, very good timing with the expedient. Very, very funny. Let me just actually check something here. Where's expedient? It's there. See, a thing with expedient here is like, that's a cooldown that is useful for specifically that mechanic, incredibly helpful. But if there's less than 2 minutes between 2 of the mechanic, then you might not have it for every one of them. That doesn't matter. If you have it, use it. If you don't, don't. It's that easy. But you're in the very, very convenient spot that you have expedient for this, and you remember to do it like, oh boy. So again, so here the question is this red mage so far down that you should use that Ether Pact is a bad idea? But given the reaction speed of your co-healer throughout this encounter, I would feel confident just using Ether Pact on the red mage, because the white mage is probably going to use Afflatus Solace on this red mage, right? Let's see, can we actually find this red mage? Where was this red mage getting bonked? Where are you? Where are you, red mage? I don't think it's on screen. You got a heal there. Based on the amount, I would guess that it is Afflatus Solace. Also because the white mage wasn't casting Glare in that instant. There was another one. Did you use anything? There you used Lustrate. Garcel says, I would say X-Cog if in range. Yeah, so what you could do in that instant. So we are here. And then the red mage drops. X-Cog is a great choice. In fact, if you are fast enough, using Recitation X-Cog is probably going to be like close to equivalent to using Benediction on that red mage. So that is a very good suggestion to do that. Now, the thing is that you need to have very fast reaction to do that, because if the red mage comes up in like above 50%, then that excogitation is probably going to pop on duration 45 seconds later while the red mage is at full health. So you need to have that happen like... Now you still have time. Like that's about a GCD later. Now it's too late. And that's when you use Lustrate. The best suggestion I could do is, if you could have reacted faster, you could have done more. But again, as I talked about earlier, the red mage didn't die. Everyone got topped up just fine, so there's nothing wrong here. The white mage probably had more tools. In fact, let me check something. Here's the damage. Who are you targeting? Where is the player? Do we have any idea where the player even is right now? We can see you're targeting down here now, finding them. That is interesting tracking of your mouse, by the way. I can't see the red mage. Where on earth are they? Are they behind you? Like the arrow here is your focus. That's the tank. Also, good practice having the tank as your focus. That is absolutely not a bad idea. That is, if you are the kind of player that likes to have a marker over the head of the tank, use focus. It puts this very specific arrow over the tank, and only you can see it, so it doesn't bother anyone else if you happen to have someone in your group that would get bothered by this. Maybe behind the party list? Yeah, they're there. So they were here. Right there. Nice guess, Alif. Very nice. And then we have the tank busters again. Now, this time, your tank is not actually going to participate in it. The healer gives the tank, the white mage gives the Gunbreaker, Aqua Veil despite this. You also, wait, when did you use this? Let's see. Right, so here's an awkward thing. Is your pet following you, or did you place it at the start of the fight? Where's your pet? It's not next to you. I don't think. It's there. Was it next to you before? Is it following you? Do you know, Gazel, if your pet was following you? Or if you placed it? It seems like it's placed. The reason why I'm asking is because I can see... Let's take that again. Ah, yeah, so you used Fey Illumination here. There it landed. So the problem here is that you need you need to because it's a pet, it's a reactionary or proactive actually buff that has to block magic damage. You need to have you have to make sure that the Fey Illumination, like again, no one died. So no harm, no foul. But if you want Fey Illumination to land, you need to use it like way in advance. Like I would recommend, if you have already decided that you're going to use Fey Illumination, you click it here. And the reason why I'm waiting until this frame right here to say use it is because it was on cooldown. Oh, thank you, Skeleton. I'm really happy to hear you enjoyed it. I'm really glad to hear that. And thank you for checking in. And thank you, Melee, for checking in. Use it before the start of the fight if you want it to block any damage before the boss dies. I will say, mad props to Gazel for actually remembering to use Fey Illumination. Any Scholar players in the chat who actually remembers to use Fey Illumination? I forget it all the time. The reason that it is so forgettable is because what does Fey Illumination do? Fey Illumination says 5% magic damage reduction and 10% magic healing potency increase. So the healing magic potency is extremely important because it means that this doesn't help. It doesn't help this. Basically, the only actions that are affected by Fey Illumination's healing boost is Basic, Adlocurium, Succor, Embrace, and Seraphic Veil. I'm not sure if even Fey Illumination or Fey Union gets help. But it is literally, like, the reason why I'm saying I'm not sure is because Fey Union seems a little bit like a like a spell, but it says it's an ability, so it doesn't count. It's so strict that the healing effect is almost considered like a secondary thing. Gazel says, I usually use it to boost soccer. Exactly. You could actually, that is I think Licky has a good idea here. So tank is about to pull. You use recitation and then you use protraction on the tank, then you use Fey Illumination. Actually, maybe you should use Fey Illumination a little earlier. And then add Lucurium, and then you get the biggest shield known to man. It's for your White Mage co-healer. That is actually a good point. White Mage has a lot more buttons that would get help from that. Speaking of which, while we're on the subject, White Mage's Temperance does the same thing. Actually, Temperance is slightly better Fey Illumination. Temperance is literally just slightly better Fey Illumination. Oh, that's Coco. So, good point on that, but still, I want to say good job on actually remembering to use Fey Illumination. It is one of those buttons that always get forgotten, so I think that is really good. Temperance heal up doesn't affect allies. Temperance's effect increases healing magic potency by 20%. I'm pretty sure that it only affects your healing. And it is worded that way. Let me just... Can I test this real quick, Coco? So you have the damage taken here. Coco gets the damage taken reduction here. I have the Temperance buff that then also says healing magic potency is increased. So that is your magic potency. And the key thing is it's magic potency. Again, it is specifically magic potency. And Lemon says, where would I go? I can't remember how to check that. Oh, it's over here. Isn't Temperance just like old largesse for White Mage? Yeah, pretty much. It's basically largesse, the roll action. This is where my house is, Lemon. Plot 36, 29th ward. You should be able to rewind or pause the stream to get it if you didn't get that written down fast enough. Iggy says, in DSM, my 130,000 health warrior had more shield than HP. Oh yeah, did you know, if you've ever seen a shield fill out the entire bar and then there's like a little diamond over your head, over it, that means that you have more shield than health. Coco says, is that the aura play dead emote? Yes, it is. But yeah, the Temperance helps the White Mage heal more, but again, it only works on spells. For White Mage, that is pretty inconsequential because most of the White Mage's healing is going to come from spells, right? And you're going to be using, like, if you're using Temperance, you're probably going to be using Afflatus Rapture, maybe even a Medica 2 if you're feeling fancy. And both of those are affected. The full thing of Medica 2 is affected, like, also the heal over time effect should be affected. But it is important. Or Cure 3, true, like, if you have a group that actually clumps up for healing, then Cure 3 is nice. Jacob says, my past scholar co-healer was obsessed with healing potency buffs on him and healing increases on a warrior on pool to get double shields on the power. Oh yeah, because the warrior could use Thrill of Battle to make the shield even bigger, right? Doesn't Cure 3 have a lot of range now? It's still 10. I don't think they buffed it. big, but it's not Medica 2 or 1. It's mostly that 10 yawns radius is small enough that it is easy to miss someone, and when you're using something like Cure 3, you need it to hit everyone. And Cure 2, or Medica 2, is just more likely to hit everyone because it's 20 yawns. For the sake of comparison, right? Asylum is 15. I don't think we have a placeable 10 yawn thing, so it would be hard to test. I could actually test it. That's close enough. That's close enough. Okay, you actually have a point here, Liggy. Cure 3... Like, that was too far. That is also too far. This is pretty much approximately the range of Cure 3's radius. I remember it being like half that at some point. Is that true? Jacob adds that Cure 3 has the advantage of being targeted. That's also true. You can adjust it if someone else is better positioned. But it is a combination of technically Cure 3 heals for less than Medica 2, and then also Cure 3's AoE is half as big. So if you don't need the healing immediately, then Medica 2 will always be better. Icky says, when it says 10 yawns, it actually means 10.5 or almost a half to the closest edge of the hitbox, not 10. Oh, fair enough. But that also applies for Medica 2. That would mean Medica 2 has 20.49. Right. Let's see if we can continue. I think... yeah, actually, I just want to follow up on something Gazel said. Illumination can buff Medica 2, so I'm using it when I can weave something. Exactly, so... But the thing is, a lot of players do not do that. They don't think about using their cooldowns for the sake of someone else, necessarily, especially not a defensive one. Like, you using Fey Illumination on the off chance that it can help the White Mage in case they want it, is pretty big. It's pretty significant. If your pet was following you here, by the way, and that was the reason why Fey Illumination was slowed down, the good news is that it wouldn't do that now. Your pet would immediately cast Fey Illumination, so it would only be half a second delay after your half a second delay. But yeah, it still means that Fey Illumination takes 1 second to resolve. So you need to use it slightly advanced, just ever so slightly in advance. Yeah, it is quite funny that that your group's tank got Aquaveil for a tank buster that wasn't coming. I think. I don't know if Nemea does a tank buster at the same time. I'm pretty sure she doesn't. Exactly, guys. It's like Monk's Mantra. It is with a T, but that's close enough. That is one of the weirdest ones because Monk doesn't really have any healing. They have Second Wind. So it feels very, and it's the same with Bard's Nature's Min nowadays, because it's basically the same. Nature's Min and Mantra is the same thing, just on 2 different jobs at this point. So here's an interesting thing. At this point, like, if this happened 3 weeks, like, just before the patch drop, then usually Ulthik would die at this point in the average group, at least in my experience. Usually Ulthik will not finish this spell on, like, on average. He will not finish this. So a lot of players are not ready to deal with this mix-up. Wait a minute. Is this the first time and I've just rewinded and gotten it twice? Never mind that. I was talking about the time where he flips the order of the knockbacks. I didn't even remember whether we had seen the first one yet at this point, because we've been going back and forth. Either way, the Althig is almost dead. He's almost all dead. And the bosses actually died almost exactly together. Very nice. I think, because now the thing is, Gazel said that they were worried that they were letting the other healer do too much work. I think the key thing to look for here is that most of the fight you were using Expedient when it was needed. You used Fey Illumination, you used Fey Blessing, you used your tools as they were required. So the thing is that your team didn't need huge amounts of healing. The only thing I would say is that, the only thing I would add is that when someone dropped extremely low in health, my main advice was you have a full fairy gauge. I would have used Ether Pact. Every time someone needed some healing, I would have probably just gone, oh, Ether Pact, you can have that. I don't need it for anything. That's what I would have added, is like every time someone needed a lot of healing from messing up mechanic, I would just have tossed Ether Pact on them. I use Ether Pact extremely aggressively, because if I don't, then the bar fills up too quickly, basically. So that's like the one thing I would add. There wasn't really any need to use, for example, excogitation in this fight. A thing that I was very focused on looking for. That was like, were you going to use Adlocurium at times where you could be attacking and no one needed the shield? Like, if you were doing that, then I would have said, you didn't need to do that, but you didn't. In general, I think you did perfectly fine. So I don't really feel like there's much to add. Like, no one in your group died. But you could argue that maybe that's on the white mage, who knows? Like, if the reason why you're concerned is because the white mage's mana bar is like ridiculously low, all things considered, then the big question is, oh, they used Lucid Dreaming there? And then they used it there. So in a 5-minute fight, your white mage healer used Lucid Dreaming twice. So the real reason their mana is low is probably because of that. Because they haven't used Lucid Dreaming recently. And not because they were heavy lifting for you. Because sometimes that can be a sign that your co-healer was carrying really hard on the healing because they were spamming actual healing spells that are expensive. But I don't think this was the case. But it is interesting. I have recently reviewed this a little bit. Apparently, because of the Azai's buff that came in, was it 6.3.5 or 6.3, where they reduced the cooldown of Azai's from 45 to 40 seconds? That increased the average MP recovery rate of the white mage when you also consider thin air, even at its weakest potential, 400 for a free glare every now and then. To the point where, and you also count that you're going to use lilies every so often to save yourself glares, so like absolutely the minimum amount of mana saved, even if white mage is going like just saving 400 mana on casts every so often with like lilies and with thin air, white mage has better MP management than Scholar and Sage, but Sage is better than Scholar. So if your white mage is low on MP, it is, and you're not, then it's either because A, the white mage isn't using their mana recovery very well, or B, because they're carrying, or C, because they're wasting their mana. Phoenix says, I tried linking Ether Pack on anyone that has the lowest percentage at the moment and there isn't something big coming up. Yeah, exactly. If someone needs healing, just do that. Like, if you might. I don't know how much Sage you play, Gazel, but you might get better acquainted with using Ether Pact if you tried playing Sage a bit. The thing is specifically that it's not enough to just play Sage. What you have to do is play Sage and then, you know, really aggressively move your Cardia around whenever it needs someone needs healing. Like, that is the kind of power Ether Pact offers the Scholar. The ability to choose who gets the healing and then boost it. Sage just inherently has the ability to choose, but they don't have the ability to let the game choose for them, so they have to either waste the healing or actively, like, move around this Cardia badge between who needs it. You could try that. You could also just go and say, I'll just try to use Ether Pact more. You can also say, what I'm doing works perfectly fine, and just maybe take some lessons from this review with you and say, yeah, well, I learned this. And that's also fine. If you later post in another clip and you want reviewed and we go over the same things again, then it's not going to be like, I'm pretty sure I told you to use Ether Pact more. Not at all. It's just going to be, then we go over it again. I would say I would use Ether Pact here, for example. Like, I'm not going to be checking your homework, right? Is what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to be checking your homework. Yeah, that took a lot longer than I had anticipated, but we talked a lot about a lot of healer mechanics, so I think overall, very good. I hope some of you learned some things from... oh, there's Lemon. And I feel like we went over a bunch of like healer mechanics in general, and that was really good. And I hope some of you learned something, like some things to consider yourself for your own play. Like, that is the really good thing about these reviews, is that we check some actual gameplay and see, well, how do they play? Like, if we're doing one of these reviews and I don't have a clip or some clips to review, I might just, like, fish out a clip of my own so that we can take a look at that. But I genuinely think it's more interesting to see what you guys did, because that everyone else gets, like, about the same value out of the clip review, but the person who sent in the clip also gets the value of, like, the added value of how well they play themselves. Nikki says, I sent in I posted a tiny video. Let me see here. Oh. Just a moment. Let's take that again. It forced me to download it, so I had to deal with figuring out what was happening. So I needed to check it. You said there was sound, so I needed to check if there was music playing. Kazai says, I want to play Scholar now. Well, that's good.
Like a lot more.
Oh, here's top.
There's lack of mid as well.
Nice invuln.
People need to get used to mid.
You're not getting very much healing here. I think you're going to die.
Like a lot more.
I haven't done I haven't done top myself. I haven't tried top myself. So all I can do is look at it at face value and go, well, both of your tanks are using invulns. I don't know why both of your tanks needs to do that. I'm guessing that you need 2 tanks to take it or something bad happens. because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. There's also the possibility that the cones are shooting at both tanks, so
As
it's
well.
better to overlap
Just
them.
put it on yourself. People need to get used
So
to
I'm
it correctly,
curious
committing
what's killing everyone else
it
off.
correctly.
There's a rear shot right there, getting a double kill, and then you die because you didn't get healing. Both tanks get tank buster cleaves. Right, well, that was my suggestion that might be it. And magic vulns. Yeah, exactly. Like, I saw
Like a
that.
lot more.
Like, you get magic vuln, so if they overlap, you all die. And there's 2 of them. But if you have invulnerability, it's fine, right?
There's lack
But
of mid as well.
the key thing here is
So
that
just
you
put it
need
on
more
yourself.
healing than this. You need more
People
healing
need to
than
get
this.
used to committing it
You
correctly.
need more healing than this. You still need more healing than this. Like, the boss didn't even get the killing blow on you. You just... The boss just went to town on you, doing nothing, and then, just as the mechanics seem to be resolving, you just drop dead in front of the boss. The boss just standing there like, how did you survive all my damage? And you're just standing there like, ah, I'm invincible! You only got 3 heals from Walking Dead. If I got 4, I'd survive. Yeah, that was what I was wondering. I think we went over the calculation and found out that Living Dead is perfectly survivable on just the Dark Knight's own capability nowadays. So it was a little weird that it didn't resolve. Also true, Matthew. The only way they would have recovered that is if the healer had... If you had Limit Break 3 and the healer was allowed to use it, then you might have been able to live for the next mechanic. But it's an ultimate. You probably needed that limit break for something else, so you would just fail a future mechanic. I think that the new Living Dead is much better. The next mechanic is Enrage. Oh, well. There you go. That is a good clip. It's a funny clip. And yes, if anyone is wondering, you are allowed to send in funny clips for me to react to instead. That is also allowed. I think I actually have that stated in the how to post. I say it can be a specific fight, it can also be something weird that happened. It doesn't have to be combat related, it doesn't even have to be Final Fantasy XIV. But please indicate what it is we're looking for in the clip. Like, if it's obvious, like, it's a funny 15-second clip, that's fine, but if you're posting like a 5-minute video and what you actually want me to see is 3 minutes in, just tell me, so we don't watch the full 5 minutes, and then you go, oh, well, actually what I wanted to talk about was what happened here. And if there's anyone that is in the chat right now that is wondering how they go about posting clips, we have a Discord community server where there is a clip review room where you primarily send them. It has to be like in a format where I can relatively easily open it. Either it's a YouTube or like YouTube video, or it's like an MP4 like Licky sent. That also works. And then we will take a look at it. If it's like you want assistance, like tips and advice with it, like Caetsu got or Orion last time, that is fine. If you would rather just say, hey, this interesting thing happened, then we can look at that. It's best if there's like a learning experience from it, of course. But anything is fine. Emir says, how do you unlock ultimates? Typically, you need to beat the Savage, the final boss of the Savage raid tier associated with the patch that the ultimate came out in. So, for example, to unlock top, I believe you had to complete P8S, is that right? It's fine, Senras. I check the clips when we have these streams, so that would be next time. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, you would have to do P8S, then you can unlock top. And you might be thinking, well, that is a little bit of a steep requirement. Yeah, but you need P8S item level gear to have even a chance of beating it anyway. So, like, yeah, you could have P9S and beyond equipment, and then you would get scaled down. But you need the current raid tier's best equipment to stand a chance of beating it. Just in terms of damage requirements, specifically, as we discovered, top can be beaten with 0 healers, apparently. Very, very interesting discovery. But yeah, that is the hardest content in the game, Alif. They tend to be insanely difficult encounters, both because of the mechanics and because of the length. Like, they're usually significantly longer than any Savage fight, and you have to play close to perfectly throughout the entire thing. Matthew says, for older ultimates you can use Endwalker gear. Yeah. P12S gear is worse than P8S for top. That makes sense, because you would get scaled down, which turns off your materia. So you would need specifically, I believe the best gear in the game for top will be whatever drops from the dungeon that gets added in 6.5. Presumably that will be item number 635, right? I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And that's usually how it goes. Of course, it is only going to be the best if the actual stat combinations from the gear are actually good. Smash cut to the future in 6.5, where all of the gear has 0 crit on it, cause reasons. Wouldn't that be funny? Jacob says, they have another type of difficulty, I feel like. It tests your endurance, mental capacity, and consistency. Yeah, it is longer. That is the key thing. It is longer, and it is a lot of different mechanics. Just to put it into perspective, so I rated like Mythic and Heroic back in World of Warcraft. Back in Mist of Pandaria, I was doing the final boss, Garrosh Hellscream, on Heroic before it became Mythic on 10-man. That fight is 15 minutes. That is an ordeal. Exactly, as Vicky says, Ultimate isn't really more complicated than Savage, but 19 minutes of doing a single mistake means wipe. Exactly. Yeah, Eska, 15 minutes. Now, the key thing is it's 15 minutes with no checkpoints or anything. And the worst part is that that fight, like, there was a 4th secret final phase only in the hardest difficulty, and you would typically wipe if you didn't finish it in under 2 minutes. And one mistake was a wipe. So you have this 13-minute fight, and then 2 minutes, one mistake, you wipe. Very fun. Very, very, very fun. But there was one saving grace, because the prevailing strategy was there was a mechanic you could resolve by just not doing it, which meant you had to stand still for 1 minute. So there was like this intermission in the fight where you just had like 1 minute of just imaginary elevator music playing. How long is E8S? Lemon says, a test of your reflexes, perhaps. I think all Savage encounters are tests of your reflexes, actually, now that we're on that subject. Who's Nora Voras? Is it someone's name that I've never added? I don't know who this is. That's you. Oh. Are you also a summoner main? Are you a samurai main? What is your favorite ranged job? Can be healer, mage, or ranged physical. Mm-hmm. 12 minutes. Oh. Eska says, I love how P12S is both horrifying lore-wise and incorporates NASA strats. Ah. Thanks! I'll put this up later. In? Eska says you're just giving everyone chest plates. I'm giving everyone a little souvenir, yeah. The chests are these. That's why I carry them around everywhere. Nikki says, my favorite healer is Astro. Sadly, it's the only healer I can't play. Oh. I'm not good at Astrologian either. I prefer the barrier healers. Yeah, exactly, Eska. It's the official outfit. You can, if you don't have access, like if you're not on EU, you can of course make your own. It's just these, it's pixie cotton robes, twin silk coats or twin silk robes. And then just dunk it in cherry pink dye and there you go. But the key difference between the ones that I'm trading is that they have my name on them. Right at the bottom there, you can see it has my name on it. It loses that name if you put it in your glamour chest, by the way. So if that's something you want to keep, then don't put it in your glamour chest. And Coco says you're gonna run out soon. I just recently filled up again, so I don't think so. Yeah, basically, if you approach me and you mention that you watch the channel and you talk with me more than like a single sentence, then I will typically ask you that question, and then I will hand you a chest piece if you haven't received one yet. And everyone gets to have one. It's like a little souvenir. Also to encourage people, because some players are scared of approaching, you know, some YouTuber they've seen in the game. So I give out a little present if you do. Is Astrologian so much different in Endwalker? I mainly played Scholar for healing back in Shadowbringers, and I switched to Sage in Endwalker, simply because, I think I've talked about this before, but one of my favorite actions in the game is Sacred Soil. And the big thing for me with Sage was that not only do I get to control my pet healing, but Kiraholi is easier to use. So it was just the things I love the most about the job, better. Hey me, who else? How are you doing? Astrologian got some adjustments and do not have as many options to apply. Oh yeah, that's true. With Endwalker they lost Nocturnal Sect. That is true. They also got Astrodyne. And that was pretty funny. When I was making my starter guide for Astrologian very late in Shadowbringers, I actually included guidance on how to use Astrodyne, because it was so close to Endwalker that I added it anyway, just in case someone needed it in the future. It's funny how quests still talk about how you need to learn your sects. That is true. You know what's even weirder? What is this? If you didn't play Astrologian before Endwalker, then what? Why? Right? If you started playing Final Fantasy XIV in Endwalker, and this is your first experience with sects, you would just sit there like, why is it called that? What does that have to do with anything? And that is true, Phoenix. I think the generally reasonable setting for why they made it so that Astrologian didn't get to switch anymore was because in Shadowbringers you had an uneven amount of healers. So if Astrologian was a pure healer in Shadowbringers, or Heavensward, or Stormblood, then every group would need a Scholar, and then a group would need either a White Mage or an Astrologian. If Astrologian was entirely a barrier healer like Scholar, it would have just been Scholar and Astrologian that would have been like mix and match. So you needed to have the Astrologian be adaptable for the game to function correctly for the healers. That like the distinction here was important. Like the thing is that before Endwalker there wasn't as much a thing of, oh, this is a pure healer, this is a barrier healer, but there was the distinct detail that Scholar shields and Astrologian shields didn't stack and things like that. So you didn't want both. And you wanted shields, right? And that means that when they added Sage and Endwalker, they had an even amount of healers, so they could just go, oh, we have 2 barrier healers and 2 pure healers. And I think that brings an interesting question for Gazel. So what are they going to do when they add a new healer? Give back Astrologian their sex? I'm guessing that either they'll make the 5th healer either one of the 2 types, give them the ability to adapt, or make a 3rd type. That is my guess. Eska says Nocturnal Sect was kind of bad though. All the shields took up disgusting amounts of mana. Generally, Diurnal Sect was in all aspects, in terms of actual healing, better than Nocturnal Sect. It healed more, it cost less to heal, and while the Nocturnal Sect specifically had more shields, the Diurnal Sect did so much more with it that unless you actually needed the shield was a waste. You didn't want the shield. Like if you had, if your Astrologian got to choose, it would always be better to choose Diurnal Sect. Like if you had an Astrologian main and then you had an Omni healer or something, right? Then the Omni healer would be better to choose Scholar so that the Astrologian can be Diurnal Sect. In my opinion, at least. Who's this? Alice, who's this? Are you in the chat? It's you, Jacob. I see. Do you also want a shirt? I need to have like instead of like having people ask, I need to just have like a little note in the corner of the stream or something that says where my house is, so that people like, because I can see after I showed where my my house is, a lot of people came. It is plot 36, ward 29 on Louis Soir, Kesaya. It's not about whether you can make it yourself, Jacob. That's why I'm telling you, you can easily make this item yourself. It is not even very expensive to make. The special thing about this item is at the bottom. Like right there under sells for 662 gil, you can see that it has my name on it. This disappears if you put it in your glamour chest. That's the special thing about this shirt. For the people that care about that, that's the special thing. I only hand these out. I don't craft them and put them on the market board. I give them out. So the only way to get that on it is if you make a character with the same name and craft them yourself, of course. Lemon says Alice glam is very pretty. It was very nice. This is also very nice. I think that actually works surprisingly well. Nikki says thanks for the money making idea. I wonder if people would actually be interested in buying shirts with my name as the crafter. Eska says, I'm predicting that we will get some kind of time mage class next expansion. I think what most people are predicting is that we're getting a ranged physical job and a mage, like a DPS mage, simply based on the fact that there are 4 healers, 4 tanks, 5 melee DPS, 3 ranged physical, and 3 mages that are not limited. And yeah, you might not believe it, but Astrologian is the closest we're going to get to time magic. Back in Heavensward and Stormblood, Astrologian had an ability that extended the duration of buffs they had applied to everyone, and that was time magic. And time mages tend to have spells like gravity. So like, and they also have a spell called light speed. Like, it's very subtle, but Astrologian has all of the time mage stuff. Like, they could have an extra time mage focused job, but Astrologian has already taken a lot of the tools out of the book. Jacob says, my friend has the tinfoil hat theory, that because we have so many volleyball animations, the testing animations for blitzball job. Oh yeah. They reused that volleyball animation thing from the Hildebrand story recently a few times. The thing about that is, I believe the origin of the Hildebrand story is that that's where they test. Because that's in which city? It's in Gridania. In the Lavender Beds. But they usually do really wacky animations in the Hildebrand story because they're testing the limits of what they can do. Which means that they might be using that volleyball animation because it worked so well in the Hildebrand story. They might have made it because they have a plan for a blitzball job or something. But I mean, they could do something that throws like volleyballs at enemies. Like, the key thing that I am curious about is because every job in the game has a unique weapon. With the exception that white mages and black mages kind of have 2 different kinds of stick. Whatever new job they add would need to have a 4th type of logically ranged weapon, right? And it cannot be a gun, it cannot be a bow, and it cannot be chakrams. They could add a job with a boomerang. They could add a job that throws volleyballs, for instance. They could add a job with a crossbow, as Eska says. Then, like, that could work. I remember I have talked about I would like a thing that Final Fantasy XIV feels like it's really missing. And this comes up every now and then. It's kind of annoying for archer players that they choose an archer and then by level 30 they realize that they actually chose a bard. They're not really an archer and they're not, like, it's not really what they were looking for, right? Some players will say that. They could have a sniper and give it a crossbow. And sniper is at least a job in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Now, I know we have heard that they said that they're trying to move away from already established jobs in the Final Fantasy franchise, like, for instance, with Reaper. But that would be an example of what they could do with it. Phoenix as Beastmaster with axes could be a thing, but since Warrior already carries them, maybe whip or a boomerang weapon, they already played with the idea of Beastmasters. Many of the bosses in Bozja are Beastmasters. They use a single-handed axe and a shield. Now, I remember that at some point they even talked about that they were thinking of adding an additional limited job with Beastmaster being an idea, and then it never came up again. Yeah, that's true. Beastmaster's carrying instruments. But yeah, I'm pretty, like, I have heard a lot of people agree that it is probably going to be a mage and a ranged physical job. And I'm willing to agree with that. It would make sense to do that. The argument used to be that the reason why you need to have more melee DPS jobs than ranged physical and mages, and hear me out here, was because you needed 2 melee DPS jobs in a group anyway. So you needed to have like twice the options. Like you need 1 ranged physical, 1 mage, and then 2 melee DPS. So of course you need twice the amount of melee options to make it interesting and varied. But nowadays, the difference, it seems like they're trying to figure out exactly how the balance needs to be, but the difference between having 3 ranged jobs and a melee versus having 2 melee and 2 ranged jobs is getting smaller and smaller, so it's getting more normal to have 3 ranged jobs, and that means that you don't need to have twice the melee options. You could have, like, genuinely, it would make more sense to have more options in general. So you need more ranged physical jobs, you need more mages. In my opinion. And who's that anime then? But that's why I think that it makes very good sense to add an extra ranged physical and an extra mage. It is me, who else? Oh. Well, there you go. Do you also want a shirt? He has had that, I'm sure he's had that in the bank for ages. He's been ready with that one. It's me. Who else? I'll pass on the merch until I have a better idea of what I like playing. That's fair. If you are not, if you're below level 68, you wouldn't be able to wear any of them yet anyway, so that's perfectly fine. So yeah, you can ask another time. Just let me know if I could forget to ask you. Yeah, exactly, Licky. Doppelcaster is very viable now. And part of that is because of how strong Black Mage is now. And if they make this like difference between the DPS jobs closer, then these kinds of compositions will be more natural and make more sense. And who's Keslar then? We have so many people today, that is incredible. Let me just leave this group. Yeah, Black Mage is very hard. So here's the thing. Originally, my argument for why Black Mage needs to be strong is because the job is really hard to play. I've talked about this previously. If the easiest job in the game is the strongest job, then you have no reason to play the harder jobs, aside from your personal enjoyment. Hey, Green. And if that's the case, then you need to make the stronger jobs harder to play to give people incentive to play them, which I know sounds ridiculous, but I have genuinely seen players complain that because Dark Knight allegedly is the weakest of the 4 tanks in logs right now, and they have the worst mitigation, magic mitigation, remember? There's no reason to play Dark Knight, because you can just play Warrior and Paladin, who are both easier to play. It doesn't matter. Like, the thing is, I saw that, looked it up, and saw that, oh yes, Dark Knight was at that very moment doing 5% less damage or so 2 to 4 maybe, like maybe 3%-ish less damage than the one below that it was below. I'm just saying, if you're wiping to Enrage, it's not because your tank is a Dark Knight, right? That's not the reason. The reason you're wiping to Enrage is because you're wasting your time thinking that the reason is because your tank is a Dark Knight. That is the reason. Because if the tanks are that close together, it's crit variance, if anything. That's Kasaya. Oh. Are you a healer main, Kasaya? Or what kind of shirt do you want? Is maybe the better question. What kind of shirt do you want? You are a healer main. I always ask and then also check the adventure plate because sometimes people actually... Oh, you're too far away! I'm in the situation, you know, the one where you have like a cat parked on your lap. Nikki says, Black Mage is illegal. I think it's called Infinite Paradox, but Illegal Paradox also works. Rotation looks fun. Yeah, also that, Nikki. The reason why you're wiping to Enrage is because you have three physical ranged, and none of them are a machinist. Eska says, here's my opinion, we won't be getting a caster job. I think we'll be getting a scouting job, since Ninja is the only scouting... No. Listen. Let him cook. I agree. We're going to get a ranged physical job, and it's going to be using scouting equipment. Because that's also dexterity gear. I agree. It would only make sense. And it also makes sense in connection with the fact that a Dragoon that has not had a partner to share gear with for ages got Reaper this expansion. You'll get Mushroom Gatherer and Shoemaker Crafter. You thought you were getting new combat jobs. Psych! Clearly, we don't need more combat jobs. Like, look at this, guys. What are they going to do with this menu if they have to add 2 more here? There's not space for that. Naturally, what's going to happen is they're going to add, like, 8 new gatherer jobs and, like, 6 new crafters. A scrolling menu. That would work. They do have space, so they could probably fix it so that there's space for everything. Zenra says, where's my house? It is plot 36, ward 29 on Louis Soir. In Lavender Beds. Everybody gangster until ScreenX adds a job where you collect air. I think fishing already can do that. Like, if you're doing, like, cloud fishing or sky fishing, I'm pretty sure you can already do that. Airbender. Interesting name choice. Who is this? Is that Senras? Very interesting name choice. It's not you. Okay. That appears to be a lead kitten. Indeed. It is Ward 29. But I wonder who this is then. Eska says, I want a Final Fantasy 9 24-man set. I want a Final Fantasy 7 24-man set. And I want those who fight further in the game. Thank you. I don't know who this is. They have not let themselves be known yet, so I don't know. Party at Wall 29. Maybe level 100 Alliance raid is Final Fantasy 7 themed. Maybe level 100 Alliance raid is Final Fantasy 16 themed. We'll never know. I would like... It doesn't even have to be an Alliance raid. It doesn't even have to be a raid, but I want those who fight further in Final Fantasy 14. Please and thank you. Iggy says, it's a mystery. But didn't I add you last time? I specifically have a note here that says that your character is named Annie. You have 4 Savage ready characters. Ah, so that is one of your outs. That's fair. That is fair. Yeah, I'm going to skip on the friends list with that one because I already realized that I will eventually actually run out. I hope that is all right. I simply will run out of friend list slots anyway, but I can tell you that I have a bunch of people on my friends list that I just haven't deleted. I have never deleted a friend from my friends list, which leads to things like this and this. Do you have the parade, Chocobo? Which one is that? This one? It's the all thick boy. Of course I do. I have 4,000 commendations. He's getting down with the thickness. Lemon says I have exactly 1 friend on my list. Well, that is the special EU character. So that makes sense. Can you open the map real quick? Bed subdivision. Here. Go to Lavender South subdivision. That one. That should put you up there. You should be able to see the group. It takes a while to get a lot of commendations. And when you have a certain amount, you stop really caring that much about it. Yeah, Lemon, it is not easy because most of the people you end up playing with on a daily basis is, you know, duty roulette people. Unless you actively go out of your way to play with specific players. And that means that you don't have a lot of opportunities to add friends, right? That's quite a full list. Is it that full? It is not even completely full. It is just 80% full. You can farm commands and guild hests. That's true. Paul Roborex says, what does commendations even do except tell you that you did a decent job? They unlock some achievements. Specifically, the final commendations related achievement is the one when you have 3,000, which gives you this mount. You also need 1,500 commendations to get the combat mentor status. No, that's fine, Vicky. The thing is that the way that you tell that a Burger King crown isn't a Burger King crown is when it's worn by someone that actually knows how to play the game well. Or at least knows how to be a mentor and not just have it because it looks cool. So the thing is that you don't know whether the crown actually has the Burger King logo on the back side of it until you actually see the player play and the player speak and realize that they're not a mentor. Because non-mentors wearing mentor crowns are those with the burger crowns. Exactly, Potato Jack. A real mentor are those that are actually willing to help people. It's not necessarily being perfect at the game that makes you a mentor. What makes you a mentor is that you're good at the game, you try to help people, and you're a pretty good example of the community. Which means that you could wipe a group because you make a mistake in a boss fight. Now, what makes a good mentor is the one that apologizes for messing it up and then tries to review what went wrong. Yes, because in order to be a mentor, you need to be a mentor. Precisely. That is actually all it takes. It's that easy. Just be a mentor. Like he says, I sometimes hop on Sprout Alts just to read the abuse new players get in the super secret chat. Yeah, the Novice Network is not the best thing in the world. And Garzel says, many good mentors don't wear the crown. That is also true. The reason I wear it, I talked about this on the Discord recently. Some players, new players, actually like put value to the mentor crown because they haven't, been failed by it yet. So having it on lets them know that they can take your word for it. They can trust you. That means that I have genuinely had players like follow me in a dungeon if they don't know what the mechanic is because they see the crown. So I have it on because I don't need to hide it. Because I do believe that I do help people. I do everything I can to help the new players and everything. So I do believe that I would classify as a good mentor. So those that are too quick to judge because they think it's a burger crown, that's their problem. The rest, they get some value out of it, and that's good enough for me. By the way, Sinras, healer, mage, or ranged physical? Jacob says, Novice Network is supposed to be moderated by mentors, but it's so annoying. I just try to be nice and ask if anyone needs help. Yeah, that is the problem. It's supposed to be moderated by mentors, but many of the mentors are wearing the crown because it's mandatory to be able to queue for this, and this gives a 2-seater mount, if you do it enough, I believe. That's the problem. Potato Jack says, on Lich it's like a mixed bag. We got some of everything. The Novice Network is actually helpful most of the time. Is the Novice Network world specific? Or is it data center specific? I don't even know. Exactly, Liggy. I also have an 8-seater. I have more than one 2-seater mount. So I don't need it. The only time that I'm motivated to queue for Mentor Roulette is if I want to queue for Mentor Roulette. I wouldn't queue for it for the reward. I would queue for it because I feel like doing Mentor Roulette, right? I would do Mentor for the monocle. Is there a monocle reward for that specifically? How many mental roulettes do you need for that? I can never remember where you find the mental roulettes either, so... The Dragon Monocle for doing it 1,500 times. Don't you get the mount for 2,000? I'm pretty sure it's 2,000 for the mount. Isn't it? Then there are people with the monocle. They just don't use it. I don't think they use the mount much either, because here's the thing. Most of the people that have that mount have it because they spammed Mental Roulette because they wanted the mount. Why did they want the mount? Because this number, big, is nice and good. Me want big number here, please. Is what I'm guessing. I have a friend who's a little bit of a completionist that specifically would do like 10 like mental roulettes a day sometimes if they could get away with it, because they wanted this, like they wanted the mount. They weren't going to use it for anything, but they wanted the mount because it's technically an achievement. It is a mount they could collect. Like it says, do you have all the extreme mounts? Nope. I don't have any of the Endwalker extreme mounts. I have all of the A Realm Reborn, Heavensward and Stormblood extreme mounts, and I'm working on the Shadowbringers ones. What mount? I can't remember. I think it's like just a Chocobo or something like that. Yeah, we're working on these. I also have the Rathalos mount. Arya actually helped me with getting it. If I can find it. I do have it. There it is. What a weird place to put it. I do have it. What is Landawaffe in English? Is that a... Is that an airplane? The mentor mount is called Astrophy, I believe. It's a 2-seater horse. It's a Pegasus. No, wait, it's an alicorn. It looked like this. It's very nice, but I'm going to say I don't feel like doing 2,000 mental roulettes for that. I'm gonna pass on that one. Like I could accept doing doing the Rathalos Great Hunt 50 times for that, but 2,000 mental roulettes is maybe pushing it. Both because, here's the thing, you queue for mental roulette and you can land in almost any content in the game, including extremes. Now, the thing is, you only get credit if you actually beat the duty. So like, if you land in, I don't know, Sastasha, easy clap, right? Free clear, 10 to 15 minutes run and you're done. And you get the clear, it's so easy. And then you queue again, and then you land in Sephiroth Extreme, and your average group will not clear. So your choice is either A, stay anyway and be a good mentor, meaning that you're wasting 1 hour in terms of mentor grind, you're not getting the clear for that 1 hour. Or you leave immediately, and then you're a bad mentor. You're also locked out of roulettes for 30 minutes for leaving. But then you save those that hour, right? If you get Ramu Extreme, you leave. Yeah, exactly. If you get an extreme that you know is too difficult to beat for most unprepared groups, then your choice is either to go, well, I'm here now, and then try to teach the players the best you can, but you're probably not going to beat it because it's simply not, an hour is not enough time to learn these extremes synced. And exactly, Jacob says, and it confuses sprouts who just want to clear the duty and do not understand why queuing for an extreme might not be effective. Exactly, they just see, oh, a new duty has appeared. Well, I did normal and then I did the hard version. The extreme shouldn't be that much, like, that's, I guess, slightly harder than hard, right? That's no problem. I can queue for it, so I'll queue for it. First, they're met with a 30+ minute queue sometimes. Strange? And then they land in the encounter, and suddenly the boss is hitting like an actual truck compared to what it did before. And they're just as confused as you are, who landed in the duty, right? But if you, the mentor, zone in and just leave, that doesn't teach them that. If you zone in and tell them that they shouldn't queue for extremes, that doesn't teach them that. They need to fail that hour. They need to fail for an hour to realize that it cannot be done that easily. They need to try it. And then there's the chance that they beat it. I have landed in Ifrit Extreme through Mentor Roulette and beat it in that hour. Which means that the people that queued for that was like, oh, that was awesome, let's queue for the next one. And I'm sitting there like, I'm going to skip Mentor Roulette for a little bit. To teach them that they should leave too. Well, you could do that. But generally, like, the best advice is to let them fail. In this particular aspect, so the thing is, we know this. A new player does not know this. You tell them it's impossible, you can't beat it, and they go, watch me. I feel like I'm pretty good at this game, if I do say so myself. Then they go, pull the boss, dead. And that teaches them a lot more than saying, no, you can't do that. I have tried. I have multiple times told sprouts, don't bother queuing for extremes. And then they do it anyway, and then they turn around and tell me, yeah, actually I queued for Ifrit Extreme and we beat it, so there, so ha. You send them a 30-minute video guide and they leave so you don't get the penalty. Exactly, Coco. Did you listen? Or did you queue for an extreme anyway? Follow Break says, before I started playing the game, my friend that got me into the game was doing an extreme, while streaming it in Discord, so I learned why I would never want to do extreme without communication. There you go. Like, the best way to learn it is to see it be done, or try it yourself. That's what I'm saying. Just zoning into an extreme and then just telling the sprouts, yeah, this isn't happening, and just not even giving it a try. Like, you need to stay there and pull with them so that they can wipe. So that they can go, okay, this is a little hard. But the thing is that they will usually go, well, how do we deal with that mechanic? Because that's usually how the game works. You can wipe on something like Seed of Sacrifice normal within the first 30 seconds if you don't do a mechanic correctly. That is possible on normal. So going, well, what went wrong, and then trying to figure it out isn't completely outlandish for a sprout. They would still go, well, it is doable. What did we do wrong? And then you either have to, then you might want to explain that to them, but that's still not good enough because, yeah, so you fixed that mechanic, the mechanic that happened 20 seconds into the fight. What are you going to do about the mechanic that happens 40 seconds into the fight, 60 seconds into the fight, 80 seconds into the fight? Play poorly so that they can give up? That's what I mean, is that if you, so here's the thing, if you zone into the fight and immediately, like, show that you're not interested, and then you play worse intentionally, there's a chance someone might realize it or assume that you are, and then they might just say, well, the reason why we're wiping to this fight is because you're not even trying, Mr. Burger Crown, right? So, like, you have to, like, as a mentor, the best way you could go about it as a mentor is sewn in, big smile on, you're at work, you're a mentor. You have to be the big smiling face trying your best to teach these new players. And don't get mad when you land in Sephiroth Extreme or something. And then you try to teach them, you might say, oh, this is probably not going to work, guys. Extremes are pretty hard, but we can try our best, see if we can learn something. And then, optimally, you try for like 15 minutes. Why 15 minutes? Because you cannot vote abandon until 15 minutes has passed. And then you try the best you can until those 15 minutes have passed. And then you go, I don't think this is going to happen, guys. Would you like to hop out? If we vote abandon, then we go out, and then we don't have to continue. And there's no penalty for that, but we all have to agree on it. But if you don't even give them a chance to try, then they won't be very motivated to abandon, right? Vicky says, is Sephiroth the hardest extreme? No, it isn't necessarily. I don't know, like, that is partly subjective. I know Sephiroth Extreme is brutally difficult because it has so many evil traps in the fight. But from my perspective, most of these extremes are possible to do in 1 hour, in a 1 hour sitting. It is possible to learn these and beat them in an hour. But Sephiroth is not that. I do believe that you might be able to beat some of these in a 1 hour sitting, but I'm pretty sure that this, like, the key thing is because these are later, this is like the first time, one of the first times that you get presented a trial, an extreme trial, that is so hard that it, unless everyone zones in and go, oh, I know exactly how to do this, I've done this like 5 times last week because reasons, you're not beating it. That is how I view it, and I'm just using Sephiroth Extreme as an example. Like, I could have said Suzaku Extreme. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's a really difficult extreme that you probably cannot beat in your first hour of trying it. That's what I'm trying to get at. And it doesn't have to be Sephiroth. It's just a particular example. As I said, I could have brought anything out of a hat. It could be Bismarck, but that is actually possible to beat, in my opinion. But yeah, doing them is like, if you have a party ready to go, it might be good, like, to practice it. King Monomorph could also be very difficult for new players, that is true, but I still think it's possible compared to Sephiroth. And also, specifically Sephiroth, I have gotten in Mental Roulette. And you know what I did? I looked at it, wrote in my free company chat something to the effect of, oh, this is going to take a while. And then we went, oh, that is going to be hard. And then we pulled the boss, we wipe, and then me and I think there was one other mentor try to explain, like, what went wrong, like what are the first few mechanics you need to worry about. And weirdly, at least one of the party members in the group was more impressed by the amount of words I could write per second than what I was telling them. I specifically remember that. They're like, wow, how are you writing so fast? And then we went on as long as we could. I specifically remember that the timer ran out while we were in the middle of wiping. It's called a macro. It could have been the other mentor used a macro to list mechanics, but I was literally just writing quickly. As I do write really quickly. I just don't need to write very much when I'm talking with you guys. Yeah, that's why I refer to Sephiroth, because I know that is an extreme that most players would agree you cannot beat in the first try. in this way. And it doesn't have to be that one, as I said. It doesn't have to be that one. It could be any extreme. Everybody gangs until Gaiji starts typing at ludicrous speed. I do write really fast, as you see sometimes when I'm explaining something on Discord. I write like a small novel when someone asks a question. Like, it's just an example of a really, really hard extreme. But if you are like new to hard content in Final Fantasy XIV, right, then doing extremes unsynced is a way, like, generally closer to the current content is better, so that they have some meat on their bones. They can take a hit. But doing the extremes unsynced is a way to like get introduced to hard mechanics, see how do boss fights work when we do it on a harder difficulty, and practice these things. Like, even Heavensward extremes can have mechanics that can hurt a lot if you don't respect the fight, even as level 90. The fights are really short, but they still teach you something. And then as you go to like Stormblood or even Shadowbringer stuff, it gets really like a lot more difficult, and you have to respect it more. Like, if you want to see an example of that, on the channel I have these stream VODs called Morning Mount Farm, where we do stuff with my free company. We do old extremes primarily, but we've also done Savage stuff, where we just go in and farm mounts. And when we don't have a full party, some of these fights really require that you get creative. Like, for example, when we were farming Kefka, I think we didn't have enough people to resolve certain mechanics, so we needed to barrier cheese it. And if you don't know what that means, there was mechanics that you could basically... the boss would set you to 1 HP and make it so you couldn't get healed, but he didn't remove your barrier when he set you to 1 HP. So if you just put up a big Sage or Scholar Shield before he set your HP to 1, then you could deal with the mechanic anyway. It's pretty funny. But we wouldn't have needed to do that if we were 8. So like, get creative with it. Learn the game. It's really funny. That's why Warrior can solo Kefka. There you go. Kefka is 08. He is from... Is it Final Fantasy 6? I can't remember. Is it 6? That it is... Kefka is really, like... If you're doing it synced, it's actually really hard. I remember back in Shadowbringers, you needed 8 people. And it was still kind of hard. Okay, Coco, enjoy work. Hopefully. Try your best to enjoy work. Yeah, it's Omega stuff. Now, I think this was actually really fun. We just had a talk about this and that and everything. Once again, I kid you not, so last time we had I had a stream like this, I had prepared a clip to watch from Orion and a list of subjects to talk about. I never got to the list. This time, I forgot to make a list, so I just had the same list of subjects, but now they might have been a little bit old. We did the clip, and then we didn't get to the list. So that is a good thing. I'm glad we have things to talk about, and we can enjoy that. But here's the thing. I can feel in my voice that I might need a little bit of a break. And also, I have a Gunbreaker video coming out in a little bit. So I would rather not have you need to choose between watching that or watching me. So we're going to round up the stream now. It's of course the Gunbreaker thing is coming in around 15 minutes. Potato Jack says, no matter which stream I watch, at some point it always derails. Well, in this case, normally when I'm streaming, like doing solo challenges or doing main quest, we stay on target. Like, we talk about other stuff sometimes, but we stay on target. This is a stream to talk about stuff, so fortunately, we are kind of on rails. It's just that I happen to have a rail built for this particular occasion. But yeah, I'm glad that you all had a good time. I hopefully had a good time with this stream. And then, of course, there's a Gunbreaker guide coming, Gunbreaker high-level guide coming out very, very, very soon. And aside from that, remember that once again, let me see if I can find this again. If you want your clips to appear on this review, you want to put them on the Discord server. If you don't want that, but you want to hang out with the community, there is an announcement channel where I post when there's a stream or a video or whatever, and there's a schedule room where you can see what the weekly schedule is, so you know when things are coming beforehand. And then there's also rooms to chat about everything, and hey, you might just experience my light speed typing if you check it out. And with that said, if you enjoyed this stream, consider leaving a like on it. I believe it's down there somewhere, so that the YouTube algorithm knows that it was a really good stream. I really appreciate it. That of course also means that if you didn't like the stream, you have the opportunity to do the other thing, but I do appreciate it if you like the stream. So thank you. And I think that's it. On Saturday we will jump into a post-game of Endwalker on Small Kai and continue the story there. So you can see me doing that. Was it Althadal's Legacy? And thank you all so much for watching. I hope I see you all very soon. And of course, you're welcome to stay at my house after the stream, and thank you so much all for showing up. Right? So, good evening, or good night, or good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. See you all very soon.